You don't always know the moment you start wasting your life. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's subtle. Like slowly lowering the volume on your own voice. Like telling yourself, not today, just one more time. That's how I lost 10 years. Not to crisis, not to failure, but to hesitation dressed up as logic. And if that feels like your life right now, then don't go anywhere. Because by the end of this video, I'm going to hand you 5 daily rituals that rewired my brain and destroyed fear at its root. This isn't fluff. It's the exact system I wish I had 10 years ago. You'll walk away knowing exactly what to do when fear whispers, and how to make sure it never rules your life again. Back then, I told myself I was being smart, that I was waiting for the right timing, that I was being strategic. But the truth? I was just afraid, and I got really good at hiding it, especially from myself. I looked responsible, I looked composed. I even looked successful, but I was living in a silent prison, built from every risk I didn't take. Fear doesn't always come as panic. Sometimes it speaks in polite phrases like, maybe next year, I'm not ready yet, or what if I fail? And when you believe it, day after day, year after year, you don't just lose time, you start to lose yourself. If you've ever looked at your life and quietly thought, I should have started by now, then this is your moment, because I'm not here to motivate you, I'm here to wake you up. Have you lost time to fear? Drop a comment right now. No more waiting. I'm moving now. You never know who's watching that might need that spark too. This isn't just my story, it's a mirror, and it's where yours can begin again, without fear at the wheel. The lie that stole a decade. You've been lied to, not by the news, not by your parents, not by society, but by the most dangerous source of all, the voice in your own mind. The one that tells you you're being logical when you're just afraid, that you're being patient when you're really stalling, that you're being smart when you're quietly surrendering. I know that voice. I lived with it. I trusted it. I let it talk me out of bold moves. I let it convince me that maybe later was a strategy, that not yet was maturity, but it wasn't. It was fear, repackaged, rebranded, and rehearsed so many times in my head that I mistook it for wisdom. That lie didn't scream. It whispered. It didn't challenge me. It comforted me, and that's why I believed it. Because comfort feels true when you're scared. Most people don't quit on their dreams with one big dramatic decision. They quit in small ways, in subtle justifications. They say, I'll do it after this quarter. When the kids are older. When I feel more confident. And they repeat that until a year slips by. Then 3. Then 10. And when they finally look up from the fog, the world has moved on, and the version of themselves that once burned with fire has gone quiet. I used to think fear would go away once I was more experienced, that I'd feel ready someday. But no one ever told me the truth. Fear doesn't disappear. It adapts. It evolves with you. It gets more clever, more polite. It stops being loud and starts sounding like logic. It wears your voice, your reasoning, your past failures. It becomes part of your identity. And that's when it becomes lethal. Because you don't fight it anymore. You follow it. Let me be brutally honest. The lie that stole a decade of my life wasn't, I can't. It was, I shouldn't. That one word, shouldn't, has destroyed more potential than failure ever could. Because it sounds wise, it sounds cautious, but underneath it's soaked in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of messing it up and having no one to blame but yourself. And the more I obeyed that voice, the more it grew. The less I moved, the more I questioned myself. The longer I waited, the heavier the regret became. Until eventually, I wasn't just avoiding fear, I was becoming it. I was the hesitation. I was the silence. I was the version of myself I swore I'd never become. But here's the first step toward destroying fear forever. Recognize the lie. Not just in theory, in real time, in your decisions, in the way you explain things to yourself, because fear doesn't need to overpower you. It only needs to convince you to pause, to wait. And if it can do that long enough, you'll destroy yourself without it ever lifting a finger. And that's the terrifying part. Fear doesn't kill your life. It just makes sure you never live it. The day I snapped. I once knew someone who used to smile in public and break inside in silence, who gave great advice to others but never followed it himself, who held so many dreams in his chest they started to feel like weight, not fuel. That man was me. And the day I snapped didn't come with a breakdown. It didn't come with screaming or chaos. It came quietly, on a Tuesday. I was standing in the parking lot of the same office building I had driven to for 8 years. I had just turned down an opportunity again, something that made my heart race, something I actually wanted, because I told myself, like always, it's not the right time. And for the first time ever, I didn't feel relief. I felt disgust, with myself, with my excuses, with the man I had become. That moment broke something loose, and in the silence that followed, one question echoed so loud I couldn't ignore it. If not now, then when? Not rhetorically, not philosophically, practically, literally. When would I finally stop handing my life to fear like it deserved to lead me? That's when it hit me. Fear wasn't taking anything from me. I was giving it everything. Every later, I said. Every time I stayed quiet. Every time I overthought. Fear didn't rob me. I surrendered to it again and again, wrapped in reasonable-sounding lies. That's the day I made a vow, not to change everything overnight. Not to become fearless, but to stop obeying fear like it was law. To stop letting hesitation sound like wisdom. To stop living like I had time to waste. I went home that night and wrote one sentence in capital letters on a torn sheet of paper. I taped it to the mirror. Do it scared. No more waiting for courage. No more waiting for perfect. Just movement. Just proof that I could take one small action without needing to feel invincible first. And something happened. Not overnight, but over weeks, then months. The more I acted while still afraid, the less control fear had. My self-respect started to come back, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel stuck. I felt awake. That was the day I snapped. Not into rage, but into clarity. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. Fear will still visit, but it doesn't get to lead anymore. The new law, fear doesn't lead here anymore. What if I told you that fear never truly leaves, but you can strip it of its power so completely, it forgets how to speak in your presence? After that Tuesday, I realized I didn't need a new life. I needed a new law, a new standard for how I show up, even when I'm scared, especially when I'm scared. I had spent so many years thinking fear meant stop, wait, rethink, rebuild. But from that moment on, I made one shift that changed everything. Fear no longer gets to lead. It's allowed to exist. I'm human, but it rides in the back seat now, not behind the wheel. It doesn't get to vote on my choices. It doesn't get to frame the story. It doesn't get to interrupt when I speak. And every time it tries, I respond with movement. That's the new law I live by. Fear can whisper, but it never decides. You see, courage isn't loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's silent, unseen. It's when you hit send on the email that terrifies you. It's when you speak up in the room full of people who might not agree. It's when you make the call, sign the paper, take the step, with a voice inside still screaming, "You're not ready," and you do it anyway. Because that voice, it doesn't get to be in charge anymore. I used to think I had to wait until fear left the room. Now I know I just have to walk forward before it finishes talking. That one rule rewired everything, because fear hates movement. It feeds on hesitation, on pause, on analysis. But it dies the second you do what it told you not to. And here's the truth, most men never realize until it's too late. You don't defeat fear by being stronger. You defeat it by being faster. Faster to act, faster to speak, faster to choose who you're becoming. Fear loves delay, so don't delay, don't wait. Don't ask for permission from a voice that's never built anything. That was the law I wrote for myself, and it's the reason fear no longer leads me. Now, it follows, and it stays quiet. 5 rituals to kill fear permanently. Destroying fear isn't a one-time breakthrough. It's not a speech. It's not a book you read or a quote that pumps you up. It's a system, a practice, a battle rhythm. And for me, it started when I stopped trying to think my way out of fear and started building habits that moved me through it. These next 5 rituals didn't just help me feel better. They rewired who I was. They gave me back momentum. They taught my brain and body that fear doesn't mean stop, it means go. Not every ritual is flashy. Some of them feel small, but done consistently, they change everything. Because once you train yourself to take action without negotiation, fear loses its grip. And you become the kind of man who doesn't flinch, he just moves. So if you've ever asked, how do I actually beat this? This is how. Ritual 1. Shock the system. What if I told you the fastest way to destroy fear isn't in your mind, it's in your body? Fear doesn't always begin with a thought. Sometimes it starts with sensation. Tight chest, shallow breath, that fight or flight pulse. Your nervous system gets flooded, and no motivational quote can pull you out. That's why this first ritual isn't about mindset. It's about interrupting the fear loop before it begins. Every morning, before your thoughts have time to convince you to stall, shock your system. Cold showers, heavy push-ups, running until your lungs burn. I didn't start these because I was brave. I started them because I was tired of letting fear negotiate how I lived. And in that discomfort, something shifted. Each time I stepped into the cold, I wasn't just waking up my body, I was rewiring it to say, this is who I am now, I move anyway. Epictetus said, difficulties show men what they are. Therefore, when a man meets hardship, he should remember that God, like a trainer, is matching him with a tough opponent. That opponent isn't life, it's your hesitation, your softness, your tendency to flinch. This ritual makes you flinch on purpose, so you train yourself to stop. When your body becomes resilient to pressure, your mind follows. You stop asking, can I handle this? You already did, before sunrise. The best part, you don't have to feel like doing it. That's the entire point. You act first. Feeling catches up. Shock the system. Send a message to your fear. You don't decide how my day begins. I do. This is the battle you win before the world even wakes up. And once you do, fear starts shrinking before it even speaks. What small challenge are you using to shock your system and take your power back? Share it proudly. Your action might inspire someone else's breakthrough. Ritual 2. Win the first battle. There's a reason why high performers don't leave their mornings to chance. They don't wake up and see how they feel. They don't roll over, scroll, or snooze. Because they know something most people forget. Your day doesn't begin when the world needs you. It begins when you prove you can command yourself. This ritual is simple, but it's everything. Win the first battle. Before emails, before meetings, before the world makes its demands. Win something. Make your bed. Get up when the alarm rings. Do the thing you don't want to do. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait to feel good. Just do it. Without negotiation. That's the key. You're not training comfort. You're training control. When I started doing this, it felt small, meaningless. But over time I realized it wasn't the task that mattered. It was the signal. Every action said something. I follow through. I finish what I start. I do hard things even when no one's watching. And those wins? They started stacking. My days stopped feeling chaotic. My mind got sharper. My self-respect came back because I wasn't waiting for the day to go well. I was deciding how it would go. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the foundation of this ritual. Decide who you are, then do something immediately that proves it. Not later, not once everything is lined up. Now, winning the first battle isn't about achievement, it's about alignment, aligning your actions with your identity. And when you do that consistently, fear doesn't have room to lead, because fear thrives in chaos. But this ritual, it builds structure, certainty, presence. And most importantly, it reminds you, right from the first moment of the day, you are not ruled by feelings. You lead with action. And that's how warriors wake up. What's the first win you're committing to tomorrow morning? Call your shot below, and let this be where your momentum begins. Ritual 3. Speak before you feel ready. Here's the hard truth. You will almost never feel ready to speak when it matters most. Not in the meeting, not in the confrontation, not when your gut tells you to say something and your fear tells you to sit down. But the men who reclaim their power don't wait for silence in their chest. They speak anyway. This ritual rewired me in ways I didn't expect, because fear used to live in my throat. I would stay quiet, overthink, wait for the perfect words, and the moment would pass. Over and over again, not because I lacked the truth, but because I gave fear the microphone. So I made a new rule. Say what needs to be said before your doubt gets the first word. Start small. Respond when you'd usually avoid. Ask the question you fear will sound dumb. Say the uncomfortable truth you usually dress up. Send the message before you talk yourself out of it. You're not speaking to be perfect. You're speaking to reclaim your presence, to rebuild the part of you that stopped showing up. The Stoics taught that virtue lives in action, not intention. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That means if you believe in courage, it has to reach your voice, your breath, your timing. You can't wait to feel aligned. You have to speak yourself back into alignment. Every time you choose to speak, especially when it's uncomfortable, you break the pattern that fear depends on. You prove to your nervous system that survival isn't about silence. It's about strength in expression, not yelling, not overcompensating, just calm, grounded truth delivered before fear finishes writing its script. Because confidence doesn't come from feeling ready. It comes from speaking anyway and realizing you didn't die. Your voice is a weapon. Use it. Before fear does. Ritual 4. Rehearse domination. Most people think visualization is soft, abstract, maybe even pointless. But here's the truth. Your mind is already rehearsing all day long. The question is what it's rehearsing. And for most men, it's not success. It's failure, rejection, collapse. You don't just fear the conversation, you play out the version where you get interrupted, embarrassed, dismissed. You don't just fear the risk, you imagine it crashing down, burning everything. You rehearse defeat over and over, and then wonder why fear owns you. I used to do the same. I'd walk into meetings already shrinking. I'd relive arguments before they even happened. I'd carry tension in my chest for moments that were still days away. And every time I replayed those scenes of failure in my mind, something inside me surrendered. Not because anything had actually happened, but because I believed it already had. So I flipped the script. Now, every morning, I close my eyes for 5 minutes, breathe deep, and run the scene that scares me. But this time, I win. I see myself walking in steady, grounded, clear. I say what needs to be said. I handle friction without flinching. I don't picture perfection. I picture presence. Strength, precision. I don't imagine everything going right. I imagine myself staying powerful even if everything goes wrong. That's the shift. Visualization isn't fantasy, it's neurotraining. The nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's imagined vividly and what's lived physically. That's why athletes do it. Warriors do it, and men rebuilding themselves must do it too. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." But the opposite is just as true. we can grow stronger in imagination if we direct it. This isn't soft work, it's command training. You are preparing your body to remain calm when pressure hits, because it's not new anymore. You've already walked through it. You've already stood tall, and when your body has rehearsed leadership enough times, you won't react like a man hoping to survive. You'll respond like a man who's already decided to lead. What future win are you already visualizing and claiming? Say it out loud below. The clearer you see it, the closer it becomes. Ritual 5. Track the enemy. No one tells you this, but fear doesn't just live in your reactions, it hides in your patterns. It moves silently, convincing you that your hesitation is harmless, that your avoidance is justified, that your silence is strength. And if you never track it, you'll never catch it. That's why this ritual matters. Because awareness is the beginning of command. Every night before I shut down, I ask myself 2 questions. Where did fear show up today? And how did I respond? Sometimes it's obvious, a conversation I avoided, a decision I postponed, a moment where I talked myself out of something I knew I needed to do. But other times, fear wears a different face. It hides behind busyness, behind false urgency, behind the lie that I was being responsible. And the only way I ever learned to see it was to start writing it down. Not in a fancy journal, just 1 page, simple, brutal honesty. I didn't speak up in that meeting because I feared sounding stupid. I avoided that phone call because I didn't want to face rejection. I scrolled for 20 minutes because I didn't want to feel what I was actually feeling. No judgment, no self-punishment, just observation. Because once fear is seen, it loses leverage. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. For I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed." That's the spirit of this ritual. You're not doing it to criticize yourself. You're doing it to spot the enemy's footprints, so it can't circle back tomorrow wearing the same disguise. Over time, this practice sharpens something inside you, a sense, a filter. You start noticing fear earlier, in your posture, in your tone, in your breath. And instead of obeying it, you intercept it. Fear thrives in shadows. This ritual turns on the light, because if you don't track fear, it evolves. It finds new openings, and before you know it, it becomes normal again. But if you observe it daily, if you look it in the eye, even for 1 minute before you sleep, you remind it who's watching. And that is how you reclaim control, quietly, relentlessly, 1 honest page at a time. The Stoic mind, where fear dies. Fear doesn't live in the outside world. It lives in the gap between what happens and how we interpret it. That's where it grows. Not in the event itself, but in the story you tell yourself about what it might mean. That's why the battle against fear isn't just physical. It's psychological, it's philosophical, it's mental discipline. Because if you don't master the way you think, your mind will turn into a battlefield. One where fear wins, not by force, but by default. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. They didn't deny fear. They studied it. They examined it like a surgeon holding a scalpel. They stripped it down to its root and asked, "Is this something within my control?" And if the answer was no, they released it. If the answer was yes, they acted. That's the framework. That's how you create a mind that fear cannot command. You want to know where fear dies? It dies the moment you refuse to be ruled by what you can't control and choose instead to command what you can, your focus, your reaction, your effort, your discipline. That's the ground you take back. And the more you take, the less fear has to stand on. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just a quote to admire. It's an operating system. Most men let the outside world decide who they are, how they feel, whether they show up or shut down. The Stoic mind flips that completely. It doesn't ignore emotion, it just doesn't kneel to it. When you install that mindset, not once but daily, you become dangerous in the best way. Because you're no longer at the mercy of mood swings, bad news, or external validation. You don't have to feel fearless to move. You move because movement is part of who you are. Because you've trained yourself to value what is right over what feels safe. Fear doesn't know what to do with a man like that. A man who doesn't flinch, who hears the voice of doubt, nods, and acts anyway. Because once you realize that fear is just a mental suggestion, not a law, it loses its weight. This isn't about suppressing emotions. It's about separating truth from noise. When you step back and see fear as data, not destiny, it becomes smaller, you become sharper, more present, more free. And that's where fear dies, not in war, not in struggle, but in quiet clarity. In the stillness of a man who has taken full command of his own mind. So now it's your turn, not to talk, not to plan, to act, not because you're fearless, but because you're done letting fear write the script in silence. The man you were meant to be is waiting, on the other side of one decision, the step you've avoided, the truth you've buried. And once you stop running, you don't come out the same. You come out clearer, sharper, without excuses. And every inch you reclaim becomes ground fear no longer owns. If this hits something real, comment below, "I'm done running." You're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the man who's still stuck, still afraid, still silent, the one who needs to see someone else go first. And if this wasn't just another video, but a moment that flipped a switch in you, subscribe. Not to follow blindly, but to stand with something bigger. Because when you do, you're not only upgrading your own life, you're making these truths louder, more visible, more accessible to men who've spent years being overlooked, dismissed, and ignored. This isn't a trend, it's a shift, a movement of men done with fear, done with excuses, done with waiting. And by showing up here, you just took your first step. Now take the next, no hesitation, no return, only forward.